So, welcome back to the 1760 sessions where we talk to founders building systems and impact. I'm Harry, as you all know, from 1760 Strategic AI, and today I'm joined by the fantastic John Mews, founder and CEO of Mewsic Moves, a neurological music therapy practice that's been transforming lives across Southern California for 23 years, Long Beach to be precise, as I just learned. John specializes in evidence based music therapy, neurodivergent individuals, for neurodivergent individuals, from children with autism to adults with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. He's also a licensed marriage and family therapist, supporting entire family systems. And here's something we have in common. We both are incredibly ADHD off the charts, so having a conversation is very erratic between us. So I'm looking forward to the next half an hour. John, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, are you sure it's only going to be in half an hour? Because
Yeah, no.
this could go on for two
This is
hours.
this is why I gave us 15 minutes buffer.
Okay, good. Thank you. It's
Awesome.
nice to be here.
Good. So John, unfortunately, sadly, has gone through his dog Daisy being sick recently, and we've been praying for her. She's pulled through. So I'm very happy to have John back on the pod. But I want to kick off with Music Moves because that's where the bulk of your work is, and you're doing some awesome stuff. What led you to start Music Moves, and what made you take the leap into private? What made you take the leap into private practice?
So, to be honest with you, if you asked me 20 plus years ago, even while I was studying music therapy, if you told me that I was going to be in a private practice and own my own business, I would say not a chance. You are crazy. Never considered private practice. I grew up in a home where my dad was a contractor. He had his own business, and he worked his butt off. To just feed his family, and we barely saw dad because he was so busy providing for his family and trying to run his own business. So having my own business was never ever appealing for me. I wanted to find a comfortable job, maybe in a hospital somewhere, have a consistent paycheck. But that's not what God or the universe or Oprah or whatever you believe in had planned for me. But when I did finish, or when I was finishing up the program, I was actually working in an inpatient psych hospital, and I was really, really enjoying it, and it was my internship. And so, as I was cluing up, at that time, I used to sing in the Vancouver men's course. So, a gentleman that was sitting next to me in rehearsal, he was a special ed teacher, and he would just ask me questions about music therapy. And he's like, "Hey, I have a student that I think, might really, really benefit from this. Like, would you want to work with her or try?" And I was like, "Absolutely. I'm just starting." So, and that was the impetus right there. It was that client, that one client that just took off
Yes.
organically after that, getting referrals. So it wasn't something that I say that I chose. It was something that, was presented to me. And then it just took on a world of its own.
And then it was obviously a snowball effect from there. Um, and I think you mentioned last time you had an experience when you were younger with your uncle. And how did that early experience shape the work you do today?
So again, another population that I never really considered fully of working with, back in the day, special needs population, and now having it, all amalgamated into, a neurodivergent lens. Again, it was something I never really considered working with. I was thinking, oh, I'm going to work with seniors or something of that sort. Um, but now I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, my life was kind of already planned out for this. I had an uncle on my mom's side. He was born with intellectual disability. He also had cystic fibrosis, so he was like medically very fragile as well. And that was kind of common in our home, in our family, to be, raised with somebody that has intellectual disability. And I remember our entire family, really, not just my mom, but all of the siblings, they kind of taught us as kids, first of all, to never compare him to somebody that was neurotypical. They're like, Uncle Gary is completely different than others. And to compare him, with intellectual disability, to compare him to somebody that's neurotypical, they're like, that's not fair. That is not fair. That's not who he is. So at a very young age, I was primed for that kind of thinking, not to, compare and be like, oh, you can't talk this way. Somebody else talks like
He's
this, or
programmed
whatever that
essentially
is.
different. So it's, I love that, by the way. That's really good of your parents because it's just basically not saying he's at a disadvantage because this is how he was born, this is how he was created. And then essentially it probably just changed the way you treat him, it changed the way you approached him. It's very intelligent of your parents, I think.
Yeah. And the second part too, which is a big motto of our current practice, I keep talking to all of our team about it. Um, it is also to look at the small things, especially when you're dealing with somebody that has intellectual disability, right? The bigger goal is like, okay, well, I want you to speak, I want you to, but within there are a lot of changes. There are a lot of things that happen. So our family also told us to look at the small things. Look at what he can do, not what he can't do. Like really focus on what he can do. So that was what I was primed with growing up. And for me in my practice, that's just kind of second nature for us. Is like focus on the small things, and especially now in our business and in our practice when we're working with families, having that whole process of having this diagnosis thrown at you, really, and then for families to be like, okay, what now? Like, what do I do? So I just had this conversation yesterday in a consultation with a mom, and we talked about grieving, and a lot of families don't get a chance to grieve the child that they carried for 9 months. So with that was ideas, thoughts. They're gonna, get married. They're gonna, so carrying a child for 9 months and the thoughts and the visions that you have for their life. And then when you get this diagnosis, that child no longer exists.
Yeah, okay.
We have to switch our thinking and be like, okay,
How do you
son, like you said before, how they're born. Okay, how do we look at that as the framework? But a lot of families get stuck because they don't see this. They're still comparing to that, these ideals, the thoughts that they had, and then comparing to other kiddos that are their age. It's like, oh, he's walking by now. My son is not walking. Like, so the comparison part is really, really challenging. And I work a lot with parents and families to be like, focus on who he or she is in this moment, in this moment.
And then do you almost so that's incredible by the way. And but how do you approach the 9 months grieving? Do you say like, look, take your time. Your child isn't how you expected it to be. This is completely natural. You need a moment. Do you have to get them to almost change their way of thinking in order to come back?
Yes, and yes, and yes, but
Conversation.
it is so challenging. It is so challenging, right? Because let's just say 7, at the age of 7. So this family has been raising this child with a neurotypical lens, right? Not even, and yeah, moms, especially moms know, right? They're like, something is different. But until that diagnosis is actually given to you, they're still living in this framework of neurotypical. Like, okay, they're neurotypical, they're going to function this way, their brain is this way, it's typical, right? When they get that diagnosis, just like say at 7, so for 7 years, they've been living through this lens, and now all of a sudden over here, it's like, oh, things are different. Okay,
Yeah.
so we got to seek different therapies. We got to do this. So I truly wish, and this is my biggest passion as a marriage and family therapist, not just as a music therapist, is to really help families grieve before
Mm.
you jump into this survival mode or thriving. They get stuck in the survival mode. So when a family typically gets that diagnosis, they don't think about themselves. Right away, they go quickly to, okay, what does he need? What speech therapy? Okay, let's do this. Let's get on the bandwagon. Let's get this started. So they dive right into solution mode, fix it mode, and they just somehow table themselves, their thoughts, their feelings. So a lot of families are stuck in grieving and they don't even realize it. This grieving process is underneath that, but it's not talked about a lot. It's actually really not worked on a lot. So I love it when I get those opportunities to ask families, be like, take your time. Like, how
Yeah,
do
take
you
your time
feel
with it.
about this? And this child that's
Yeah.
in front of you, how is that different than the child that you thought you carried?
Yeah.
What's the difference, right? And if not, then they just keep getting stuck in comparing. Oh, that 5-year-old kiddo in his class, he's doing this, this, and this, but he's not yet. So the grieving keeps happening over and over and over, and a lot of times they don't even realize it. They don't
Yeah.
even know. Yeah.
So going back to Vancouver, there must have been a moment in those sessions that made you realize that this was going to be more than a job for you.
Yeah, I think it was that very first client, to be honest with you. That very first client, I was doing a home visit. Um, this could be a podcast in and of itself, but I had no car. As we just talked about before, living in London, Vancouver is very similar. It's a city where you don't need anything because transportation is so easy. So
Of
I
course.
didn't own a car. Everywhere we went, it was the SkyTrain or this or that. So I had to literally get on the SkyTrain for 30 something minutes to see this one client. And I did that for about 3 or 4 months. And that's slowly how I built my clientele. But when I went to her place, um, I had my little carry-on suitcase with my little tambourines and stuff and my little guitar on my back. And I walked into the house, and this amazing female adult, she was 18 years old, but she was functioning really cognitively at a 4-year-old level. Highly anxious, highly hostile. It just, anything would really, really set her off. I actually have a wound on my guitar from our first session. She threw her water bottle at me. But I was just sitting there and I'm like, there was something in the music that the parents were saying that, like, when
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
in that, she's in it, right? So coming from this place of anxiety and probably fear that this new guy in my house, and I pulled out my guitar and I just strummed the guitar and I started singing. I wish to this day I knew what the song was. But as
yeah.
soon as I started singing the song that she would listen to, right, on repeat, as her own form of therapy, really, um, that moment will never ever leave my
Yeah,
mind,
of course.
my feelings, my emotions. Like it was almost like she shut everything out and she just zoned right in on me and she just sat down and she reached out and she was trying to strum the guitar along with me.
Okay.
And I was like, to go from that moment of heightened anxiety to, the strum of the guitar, to go from here to, okay, I'm here with you. That transformation for me, and that's kind of why I use that word in our business tagline, is transforming. When we're in that musical space, we transform everything from our head to our feet. I always say when I'm doing music therapy with, especially in mental health, I'm like, I just really wish we could hook up to all of these scientific machines and we could monitor ourselves and know on the inside what happens to me viscerally, emotionally, you know, chemically, all of that. When music happens, I want to see it because it is a transformation. And a lot of us use music on a daily basis as therapy, and we don't even realize the effects that it's having on us.
Yeah.
And I say all the time, I'm like, isn't that fascinating? And maybe this is my ADHD, but I geek out on this all the time because
Yeah.
most of us on this planet, when we're feeling emotional or we're feeling something, or we want to block from feeling that emotion, we often turn to music.
Honestly, I was just going through my mind. I was like, any sort of sad time I go through in life, I will listen to music. Go through a breakup, listen to music. My dad passed, I listen to music all the time. I'm having a bad day, I want to go for a walk the dog somewhere. I'll put music on, and I won't necessarily always go for happy music. I think you and I spoke about repetitive music to get tasks done. I'll put on music that makes me feel. And I think music in all those experiences, whether they're good or bad, they've heightened the experience 100%.
Yep. Yeah, I encourage my client, especially the clients in mental health program. I'm like, you're already doing it. Like you
Yeah.
are already using music as an avenue of some kind of a mental health, distraction, right? Because sometimes that's important, is to distract from my thoughts that I'm having. I put music on ADHD, right, to distract from my
Yeah.
scatteredness. Okay, putting a song on helps me distract. But also on the other end as well, music helps us to validate what we're feeling, even
Yeah,
sometimes when it's
100%.
hard, right? Those hard
I have
emotions.
songs that I'll listen to, and it just takes me back to that moment. Some of them I can't listen to anymore, but no, but I
Right.
sometimes I like being transported, and it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah. So
But
talk me through what is. So go on.
the geeky part for me in this, I'm like, where did we learn that?
Yeah,
I don't think that's something that we've ever learned to sit down. Like for me, I learned early on that, okay, when I sit to the piano, but again, that's active music. Like I'm participating in that. But like majority of the people, it's like, oh, when I'm feeling something, I turn on a song or I have my favorite
I
song. Where did
wonder.
that come?
I wonder
How did
if
we
there's
get
an
there?
element of nature versus nurture because I look back to when I was younger, and it's my earliest memories of being in my mum's. She was driving like a Land Rover, and it was like the really old school one, and she used to play loads of a guy called Billy Idol, loads of Bob Marley, and then those that's was my happiness was being in the car with her singing along to me, and then I think there's an element of if you're growing up around it and seeing it as a happy thing, it will stay with you for life.
I agree too. And in addition, because my mom sang to me every
Yeah.
night when she was carrying me, even though she had no idea, now many moons later, all the scientific evidence that shows if you sing to your baby, right, or if you use music in utero, your baby will more likely have higher math skills, higher reading skills,
The memory.
and be musically inclined. That doesn't mean to be a musician, but like, music is an important part of their lives. So definitely that. And then the other part of it too, whenever I do a talk about music therapy for people that really don't know it, my opening always says, we as human beings are a walking, talking, breathing, moving music machine.
Yeah.
Every single thing about us is music. So why not use the elements of music like vibration, sound, pitch, all of that stuff to ignite all the different parts of us that's musical? So our heartbeat, that's a rhythm. The way we walk is a rhythm. The
Yeah.
way we breathe, it's a rhythm. The way
It's a
that
rhythm.
our
Yeah.
cells divide on a daily basis is rhythm. So why not use rhythm to help integrate in our daily lives to help regulate us? Or, there's so much that other therapists are doing that's not just in our practice, but there's therapists, music therapists that are working in surgery, while the client, or the patient is having surgery, playing music that they like. And there's so much, research that says, the heart rate, all of these things are more regulated when they're listening to music. Recovery time for surgery sometimes can be 50% quicker, because they utilize music to, help with all the vital signs and stuff. So it is so fascinating, but I'm like, we are a music machine. So
Yeah.
why not use music to heal us?
So, question for you is, what is neurological music therapy, and how is it different from music lessons or just playing music in hospitals, like you said?
So, I actually I wrote a blog many years ago. I should find it and resurface it. And, the blog that I wrote many years ago is music is not music. Music therapy is not music lessons, right?
Yeah.
The music lessons part is about working on something to perform. So there's this element of perfection. There's this element of practice. Music therapy is using the elements of music as a therapeutic model. So it's not about the
Okay.
outcome. It's not about, I'm going to play Chopin on stage. It's about using music that I already have to facilitate whatever my goals are, right? So then the next part is neurologic music therapy. So this could probably be a podcast in of its own, but it's an advanced certification for a music therapist, and it's heavily based in a research that was started many years ago when a neurologist came to the music therapy community and said, we want to know, because there's something magical about music, we want to know what happens in the brain when music is involved. So they looked at both things, like active music, like actually playing music, and also listening to music. So they paired together, they did this research. I could send you their name. I don't have it in front of me right now. But they did PET scans, CAT scans, and they're like, we want to monitor the brain when music is involved.
Yeah.
And what they found out was groundbreaking, because back in the day, right, we were called the right brain. Oh, if you're creative, music is processed in the right side of your brain, right? So what they found out, and verbatim, this is what they actually wrote in their research. They said the entire brain lit up from front to back, left to right, lit up like a Christmas tree. So there was activation in every single region of the brain when music was involved. So they took that and they just ran with it. They're like, okay, this means music and emotions, music and movement, music and speech, music and this, all these different elements that can have any injury or deficit in the brain. Music
Yeah.
can affect that and excel, you know. So, for example, I always use this for an example, just say speech. So, based on this science, right, and now that we know about neuroplasticity, this is a big term, right? Neuroplasticity
I
and
know
mirror neuron.
neuroplasticity is what you have. Is it, if I'm correct in thinking, it's what you have when you're younger in order to learn new things, and it's all about getting. And I listened to Huberman Labs on this the other day, and it was all about neuroplasticity in adult life, and it's you just got to constantly try and learn new things in order to. Is that along the right lines?
It, it is. That's an element of neuroplasticity because what's behind that is, let's just say, here's your little neuron, right? Like it's firing, and then your neuron hits this area. Let's just say it's speech, right? Somebody that has, speech delay could be somebody that has a stroke, right? So when somebody that has a stroke or aphasia, it's really hard for them to talk, right? Because there's been an injury in that part of the brain. So many, many moons ago, right, before all of this research and what they knew about neuroplasticity, they're just like, okay, it's a dead end. It's a dead
Okay.
end. You're never going to regain your speech. But the basis behind neuroplasticity is that in layman's term, the brain can actually make a new neural pathway.
Yes.
And what you just said, what makes that happen is practice. Practice does not make perfection. That's BS. We've all been lied to, because there's no such thing as perfection. But practice, and in neurologic music therapy, we call it entrainment. So if there is an injury, we're just not going to say no. We're going to like, okay, let's repeat it. Let's repeat the song. Let's repeat the line. And then after a while, what neuroplasticity does is the neurons say, hey, we can't go anywhere. So then as you practice more, be like, okay, let's move over here. Oh, let's move over here. And then it actually literally
Yes.
can bypass the injury, create a new neural pathway that, and then we see people speaking that hadn't spoke. So a great example of this, you guys can Google her. It's Gabby Gifford.
Happy
Gabby
gift.
Gifford is a congresswoman. Yeah, I think probably maybe even more than 10 years ago. So she got shot actually, and she had brain injury. She had aphasia. So aphasia is, a term where somebody's brain, you can speak, but your brain is kind of scrambled. So she would look at a pen and she would say cup. So her brain was kind of scattered, and so she actually worked with a neurologic music therapist that I trained with. So grateful to train with.
Yeah.
And when she worked with her, she would take songs that Gabby knew. So these songs are already in our brain, right? So they're already primed, and she would take out the words of the song and introduce words of her everyday life. So, like, say, "Twinkle, twinkle, twinkle, twinkle." We all know that our brain
Yeah.
is mapped. It's in practice. The more I remember you. It was like, this is a pen, a purple pen, and just using the melody of Twinkle Twinkle
Yeah.
Little Star. So it's her and her story. She tells this story all the time. She said it was music, it was singing, it was entrainment that really helped me
Getting
regain
back.
my speech. Yeah. And again, you see it, right? The King's Speech, right? People that have a stutter, if you can sing it, right, it really, really helps with all of that. So the brain is so fascinating. Like that's just one aspect, right? Is the speech part. It really helps with speech. That's a lot of our work with our kiddos with autism. We see a lot of people with speech and delay that it's really difficult to get two or three words together. Like want. We see that a lot in our kiddos. Then you sing a song. I want pen, right? So putting music to it And then again, it helps the brain rewire around the injury and just creates a new neural pathway. It's
Wow.
fascinating. It is so
Yeah, no,
fascinating.
I'm locked in. I
Yeah.
want to learn more. So yeah, so that's essentially what you're bringing a lot of this work into your patients. Have you had any successes recently or since you started that you want to talk about? What's your biggest success of today?
So many, so many.
That's what I want to hear.
Um, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, this is a hard question because, again, going back to like it's the little things, right, that we see. But I think our favorite, one of my most favorites, I was working with this family, little kiddo, really. He was only 4. So, I say to the parents, I'm like, you know what? If we can work earlier, the better the outcome, right? So this little kiddo was on the floor, and, we were just using songs. And, so back then we would call it he's nonverbal, which
Yeah,
now we're actually changing it. He was non-speaking because for us, if there's any verbal sound, we can work with that and turn it into some functional communication. So he would like make sounds like or so we would do dancing. We found that when he would dance and we would play music, he just would get so excited and it would create more sound. And so I sat with the dad and I said, "What's your goal? Like, what is your number one goal for your son?" I'm trying not to be emotional, but he's like, I understand. I understand my son is different. I understand my son may never ever be able to talk or may never hug me or, I'm getting there. I understand that and I'm trying to accept that. But he said, I cannot accept. I'm having a difficult time. And he said, if you can help me and help my son just to say, I love you, Dad. That's it. He said, that's
yeah.
all I want. And I was like, oh my God, my heart, my
Bit of a
heart.
task.
Yeah,
Wow.
right. Yeah.
Heartstrings being like, oh,
Yeah, I'm like, oh no, here's these expectations, but like I understand, right? Like that little thing, but
you
for
want the
him that
gratitude.
is a
Yeah.
monumental big thing. So we took all of his sounds and I was trying to get in the L sounds and just turn it into, I ah you, and just making sense of I shouldn't say making sense, but organizing the sounds that he had into something that's functional. So I'm really big on vowels. I'm like, if we can start with vowels and make sounds with
Yeah.
vowels, we can understand about 60% of what we're saying if we just say vowels alone, right? So I, la, you. That's what we were working on. I, oo. We were doing that for weeks and weeks and weeks, and the dad was there, and the dad could see the progression. And I wish I could say it happened overnight, which this never does. This is kind of like
Yeah.
rehab too, right? So you got to practice. I would say probably within 4 months in the session, he went, "I owe you," and the dad sat back, and the dad was like, I heard it. I heard it. And he just started crying and crying. I said, let's do this at home, Dad. I said, because there's an L in there, that we can bring in. But I owe you, he's saying it, right? Like he is communicating this. It might not be so articulate like some other
Yeah.
kiddo that says, I love you, Dad. But that L alone for some of our kiddos is like, I don't even know if there's a tongue in my mouth. Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand,
You
right?
can't compute
But
that. Yeah.
just to hear those vowels come out of his mouth, and the dad just cried and cried. And I sat there and I could see the dad crying. I'm like, this is a moment. I'm like, go give your daddy a hug. And they just wrapped their arms around each other. And I was like, this is it.
Yeah,
To
this is why.
us, like, oh, this is so simple, right? But, there's so much that happened in that moment for me, especially as a marriage and family therapist as well. I'm like, this is a family time. This is a family time right here where the dad has healing. This little kiddo is doing his work in rehab, trying to, learn the elements of speech. And I'm like, this is a moment. So all the time I invite parents in, I invite family in. I'm like, I want you to learn how to do this at home, not just us. I want to teach you these music elements so that at home you can have family fun time, family singing time, come together as a family because a lot of, like I said before, a lot of these parents are stuck in grief. My son's never going to talk. My son's never going to say, I love you. And I'm like, he might not say, I
Yeah.
love you, but he can approximate and be like, I owe you. That's it. That's all we
Yeah.
want.
It's
right?
an incredible story.
So that moment definitely stands out to me. And the dad was like, "It's not, but it's more than for me."
So you mentioned 2025 was a tricky year for you, despite high client intake. Can you walk us through what happened? I
Well,
understand how can revenue is up, but I think profitability is down at the moment. If you get to look at the business.
yeah, we're diving into that right now. So there has been a blip, there has been a hiccup somewhere. So we're combing through all the books and stuff. But we also did a lot of new stuff this past year. We have a paid internship for our music therapy interns, which is not common out there. So there's a lot of, places that, you have to do your internship for free. And I remember that myself 24 years ago now, when I did my own internship. I'm like, how do people do this? Like doing this internship full time, not getting paid. So last year we made a decision to take on an intern, to pay
Yeah,
an
I remember.
intern. And we also, even for myself with my own ADHD, and I'm like, I need not just an admin person. I need somebody that can help organize the business. When my brain is here doing this, because I don't know about you, Harry, but my ADHD is I'm the big picture guy. I'm like, I know what I want my business to be 10 years from now. I know what I want it to look like. Even in projects, I know what the project looks like. I know what that course looks like that we're creating. But underneath that, these little micro steps and the things that we have to do to, accomplish that, I'm like, my brain just melts in that. So we hired an admin, we hired a business manager, and I kind of stepped back a little, which I think that might have been a part of it too. I probably should have stayed more in it and still kept seeing clients, but I kind of stepped back and just allowed the staff that I have to do the clinical work, and me more or less oversee it. I think that was the biggest challenge. It
Yeah,
was
I had a question lined up to ask about, the transition from therapist to CEO. It's a
It's
big
it's a
step.
tricky one. Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's something that I've always wanted though, because I read a book a long time ago, from actually a therapist in Orange County, and you know, early on, I realized I'm like, wait a second, I'm going to max out. Like if I am by myself, I'm going to max out. I can only see as many clients. I can only charge so much. So eventually, I'm going to plateau. That's it. That's all I'm making per year. I can't make any more because I can't see more. I can raise my rates, but eventually I'm going to plateau. So that was always in the back of my mind. So I read her book. Her book was Be a Wealthy Therapist, which a lot of people are like, you don't choose to be a therapist because you want to make big money. Get out
No.
of it. This is not it, right?
And we spoke
But
about it.
her,
What goes around comes around. You work
yeah,
hard, other people, and then it will sort you
yep.
out in the end.
Absolutely. But her
Okay.
tagline is what really caught me. It said, "You can make a living. No, you can make a difference while making a living." And I was like, that is so interesting. So I read her book, and her entire book was about value, making sure that whatever you do, even if you're alone, you have value. Like what you charge is what your value is, and probably your value is 10 times more, but that's your lowest, you know? I learned that about her, and then the other part was about residual income, about working on projects like writing a book, doing these other things on the side that can help you. So those are some of the things that I started implementing a little bit. I started doing like extra workshops and different paid events so that I could have this little bit of a slush fund, so that I'm like, oh, I can bring on an intern. And so, what we're trying to do right now when we bring on an intern to make it into an actual position is a part of the internship is they have to start seeing clients on their own.
Yeah. Okay.
So that builds their clientele while they're working on their hours. And typically, by the time they're done their internship, they're already at basically a part time caseload level. So once we're done, then we can just add it to them. So for me, that was really important. I was like, you know what? Someday I want to retire, but what's going to happen to my business? Do I have to close it, or can I keep it running?
Want to leave
Can
it
I
in
have
someone's.
people
You want to
on
keep it
board that
running.
runs it? Yeah. So that's my dream. That's my desire. I had a big hiccup in life because I had my practice in Canada. I lived in Vancouver, so I had my practice there. And then I moved everything in 2013 here to Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
in my 24 years of this career, I had to start all over and start it again for the second time. So, my own chaos and energy and thoughts is like, oh, I'm behind. I'm not behind.
You're
I'm really
not.
not behind, but I had to kind of
23
step back a
years
little.
and then shifting. Yeah.
But it's good. I enjoy it. But private practice is not for everybody. It really, really is not. Those first few years, you are the secretary, you are the marketer, you are everything.
Jack of all
And
trades, wearing many
yep,
hats.
yep. And that's a recipe
This
for
is
burnout.
yeah. Well, this is where 70, essentially 1760 comes in. I'm not going to plug my own organisation here because this is about Music Moves.
Do it.
Helping people cut through the noise of operational chaos, wearing too many hats. What can you offset to AI to automate? How can we carry on growing without hitting a ceiling just through referrals, for example? And that's what we're here to do, just help a weight off of founders' minds so they can actually focus on bigger client delivery, for example, or the bigger strategic picture. But yeah, that's a side part of 1760. I wanted to finish on some questions for you, John. What is the future of Music Moves? Like, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? With scale done right, for example.
To be honest, I want to see myself sitting at a pool in Palm Springs, sitting
See you
at my
there.
computer.
Am I invited?
Okay, yep, yep. Come on over. We will do a working lunch or whatever, but like that, I just feel like I've worked hard. Like I've worked
Yeah.
very, very hard in this practice, and also I've made a lot of mistakes. So starting over the second time for me was kind of like, oh, now I get to do it right. The things that I learned, I get to do it right. So I joke about that, but yeah, I would love to be able to like totally scale back and be able to like sit at a pool somewhere and still work and have like right now, truly, we just had a team meeting yesterday. Right now, I told them, I said, in my 24 years, this is the best team that I've ever had in my practice. They are amazing therapists. They're all in. They love what they do. But something that, occurred to me over the last couple years, I grew up on the East Coast in Canada. I was born and raised in Newfoundland. So a lot of people know Newfoundland from 9/11, right? So all the planes got diverted to this little tiny town in Gander. But on the East Coast, they're really struggling with mental health support and healthcare and all that stuff everywhere, right? It's a struggle. But it hit my heart because my own niece was really struggling a couple years ago with some mental health conditions, and the lack of support and
Oh,
the
yeah.
lack of availability there. So one of my business people said, "Well, John, why don't you have a satellite office? Like, why don't you start doing music
Zoom.
therapy virtually
Yeah.
there and helping your own people with additional support when they're trying to find their psychiatrist, when they're trying to find a group for eating disorder, when they're trying to find all this stuff, like why don't you start pitching and doing something virtually?" So that's kind of, what we're looking at this year. It's like, okay, how can we go above and beyond and not just in LA? We are growing. We have 3 locations. We're going to be opening up a new location, but I'm like, we are not taking advantage
There's a
of this
huge world
virtual
out there
global market.
of, yeah.
Yep.
And like, look,
There are
if,
so
if
many.
needs be, you can probably go up there if it's just a one-off. But
Well,
there's the
think about
untapped.
it. All my family trips now will be a tax write-off.
There you go. That's the best thing about being your own business.
Exactly. I'm like, Grandma, I can come and see you twice a year, and it's my business is paying for it. No, I totally joke, but yes, and the virtual market is something to that I think a lot of people can really look at. But I think it's something that I really, really want to look at because I have a lot of friends that work in healthcare. And there's this big, big gap. If somebody really struggles, just say with addiction, right? If they're struggling with addiction, they have an addiction program, but then when they get released from the program, some of them have like a 6 month to a year wait list to see a therapist alone. So that's the most crucial area, right? So that's where relapse happen, and even sadly, that's sometimes when suicide happens. So there's this gap there, and I've been chatting with my sister and my family, and I'm like, would you run Music Moves for me in Canada if I open it up, virtual? But another thing about virtual too, it's helping provide resources and support for people that doesn't really have a music therapist near them. We have some clients that join some
There
of our
must be an
programs
element
virtually.
to Music Moves where this is where my brain's going. If you want to take it across the whole of the US, where you can almost have an app or something or a platform that someone downloads and they say, this is maybe, I don't know how your different parameters. It could be like, this is the music I'm into, this is the level of help we need. And then you can choose your therapist and then they'll come and join you on a call and register a time with them. That could be the future.
Hey Harry, we need to have a meeting.
Yeah, I don't do
You're the
that.
you're the tech person. I'm not. Again, I'm the bigger picture. I've already actually started looking at
Back to where I
apps.
go. So the reason that idea came to my head is I had a podcast yesterday with a lady who's it's based in California as well. It's called Scroll Care, and anyone who's looking at patient care, whether it's navigating a tricky medical bill or something like that, that's just a very niche example. And they have take a look into it, and they have an app called Scroll Care where they reach out to providers based on their problem and it links them up with them in the area. She's working with about 50 people. I could put you in touch with her to have to be a peer on their app as a music therapist. I would love to do that actually because she's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, yeah. And
Well,
I
and
think
also
that's a
this
good
is
idea for yourself as well.
Harry, this is another thing that I learned about business too is, you know, we've been kind of raised that okay, you got to do it all alone, right? If you're the business owner, like I said before, you got to be the secretary, you got to be this, you got to be all these things. But what I'm learning more and more, and now I'm practicing, is like even this today is like we don't have to do this alone.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I have my ideas, you have your ideas, they have theirs. We
So
can come together and
one thing,
support each other in our businesses and work together to help elevate both of our businesses. So we don't have to do
100%.
it all alone.
And one thing I also learned, so look, like I've got the idea, I can happily do that for you. One thing I learned is people are often scared to ask someone else for help, but people love giving help. Like ask someone about their certain field, or can you tell me about this? People love to tell you about what they're doing, and like I think there's too often people are too scared to ask the question. Definitely
Why is that, I wonder?
because they're not listening to the right music.
Probably. I think it's conditioning.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's conditioning from a very young age. It's like a lot of us have been told, like, you got to do it
You're on
yourself.
your own. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't even think that
And I love my
exactly.
mom dearly. I love my mom dearly, but like we grew up, and I remember my mom saying so many times, if you can't do it yourself, you shouldn't be asking anybody else to do it for you.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
So that is like, well, I have to do it all by
Okay.
myself. I could never run this business by myself anymore. There's way too many moving parts. There's way too much stuff going on. And I'm like, so I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with, even if they're trying to run a business. Like, I got to do everything. And I tell people all the time, my good friends right now, they're like, oh, I want to try private practice. And I said, you know what? If I were to do this all over again, I would hire an admin person right away. Don't wait till you get more money. Like, really introduce that part of your business now so that
Yeah.
person can take off of those tasks that just weigh you down. Like invoicing. I spent 2 hours yesterday doing invoicing and I only got like a third of it done yet, which an admin person had it done probably all of it in 2 hours.
Yeah, of course.
So, like set yourself up for success at the very beginning. Even if you can't afford it, it's like, well, hire an admin 1 hour a week. That's it. Start. And then as
Exactly.
you grow, they grow, your business grows rather than, a year later be like, oh, I want an admin person, but I don't know if I can afford it. It's like, do
Do
it.
it. Do it. Yeah, yeah. Well, John, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm pretty sure we could probably talk for another hour if I have a hard stop. But thank you so much for joining us. Such a fantastic story, and I love talking about your passion for music, your passion for helping others, and then looking at the future because you are in a period of growth. So thank you very much for joining us, John.
Thank you so much, Harry. And can we borrow your voice for some of our voiceovers
Yeah,
for
of
our
course.
ads?
Oh God, thank you,
Thank you
John.
so much. That's great.
Um, so